Hi, everybody, and welcome to Heathen Talk episode 31. I think. Yep, 31.
Season
And
two.
season 2. And tonight, it's just Lauren and I to start out with. Torin has family, and he's going to come in later. Um, but we're excited to be here. Lauren,
Yeah,
welcome back. You're feeling a little bit better now?
guys, I have finished my last full-time semester of college, and yeah, I'm feeling more human. Last week was fun because I was sick, I fell, um, and I was just so I was so emotionally just over trying to. I had to present. So as a graduation requirement, we have to do senior capstone projects. And we either have to do something for a business or we have to create an app that addresses it like a social issue. So my team and I made this app to help parents find outdoor activities for their children to help combat obesity in Arkansas. Because childhood and adolescent obesity or inactivity, like not exercising, is the single greatest indicator of obesity in adulthood. Yeah, so that had to be presented in front of a whole bunch of executives on Tuesday night, and my brain was just yeah. So it is good to be back and not have to worry about that because this last semester between that and working, uh, yeah, and burnout seriously. But I start my full time job June 1st, and until then, I'm enjoying working part time and not doing much else.
What's your full time job going to be?
I'm going to be working for the company I've been interning with for the past year. It's a digital analytics company. I do what's called I'm an operations analyst, which means I'm a translator between business and programmer. I take the information from the client, marketing data, that kind of information, and translate it into uh, a language that programmers can understand, so they can do fancy things with our database to for marketing. I love it. I love my job, but it sounds boring when I explain it. It's just a lot of problem solving and talking down clients usually.
Well, I mean, it sounds like it's a combination between customer service and technical aptitude.
Yeah, it is. It really is, and that's what I'm good at. So I'm enjoying it, and they're paying me more than I have ever made in my life. Uh, Now as an intern, so my salary is going to be even better. And I this kind of goes into a heated topic because it's something I've been mulling about in my head is when you talk about wealth and we talk about what that means, as a heathen, I am acquiring wealth at this point. I have wealth to show. I can afford to spend money, and to me, maybe I just run in the wrong heathen circles, but sometimes I feel like this, whereas it's talked so much in the sagas and all that, the idea of actual like monetary wealth, or I'm around a lot of people who don't necessarily, and I'm guilty of this too, don't get me wrong, but it's, I feel like sometimes there's a lack of wanting to show that, hey, look, I am prosperous, or even people wanting to be prosperous.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It could also be culturally here, but it just seems like there's sometimes I just see way too many people with I don't know, like who just look like they rolled out of bed and showed up at whatever. I find that a little annoying sometimes.
Well, I have noticed, at least with a lot of the heathen spaces that I've worked with, there's an affectation towards blue collar roots. I mean, whether or not they work in the blue collar industry, there are a lot of Asatruar and heathens who get caught up in wearing just their everyday clothes to rituals and things like that, and not putting on the trappings of the wealth that they earn, even if they earn it.
Well, I don't even necessarily think it's. And here's the thing: I don't even know that necessarily it is. I mean, here's the thing: you can be blue collar and still, I grew up in a town where up until I was in high school, 80% of the town worked in a factory, the same factory. And so I guess as a, but that didn't negate, blue collar people from dressing nicely or whatever, that I think sometimes it's not even that, it's almost an aping of what some of these people think blue collar is. It is not unlike some of the same things that you see in like hipsterville.
Well, and I think the one place where that gets a little different is there's that. I think it comes hand in hand with the idea of I don't bow before the gods, that sort of thing. And I saw a lot of it in the church I went to growing up because we were non-denominational, and the idea was, well, God can accept me for who I am 6 out of the other 7 days a week, so He can accept me for who I am the seventh day as well. And just being that kind of, well, I mean, one Sunday I went to church in a ratty jean vest that I had made myself with band patches, a band shirt, and used docs. So, I mean, clearly was not a religious experience for me at that point.
Well, to me, but to me, there's also a theological difference there. I mean, I was actually, I've started a new website and blog, and I've been mulling over like some stuff as I've been writing. And of course, I wrote an article a while back a while back. It feels like a while back. I think it was like a week and a half ago that got a lot of people riled up, and I kind of enjoyed that. But
Which
I
one
think
was
it
that again?
comes the my gods aren't personal, and that's okay.
Oh, yeah. I remember people were not thrilled
Yeah,
with you over that one.
yeah, and the thing is like I wasn't telling anyone what to believe. I was just saying, okay, here's the thing. This is why my God's not being personal works for me. This is the process I went through. It wasn't like, I didn't try to go in and say, well, this is what you must do. It's just, hey, this is where I was. This is how I dealt with it. This is one way it could work. That's all I wanted. But yeah, I mean, but the whole idea, the whole thought and idea is I've been mulling over a lot of that, and theologically there is a difference. I mean, because in Christianity, there's a teaching of you're supposed to dress modestly, and that also goes towards like your clothing, not just like modesty is not just don't show your boobs. It's also like not gracious and displays of wealth. And I always laughed at like some of the churches I attended, and like I'm sitting here going, wow, that's a nice Coach bag that totally goes against biblical teaching. Good job.
That being said, a lot of the ladies I went to church with would wear their nicest clothes and their big shiny gold earrings and diamonds and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, and that's okay. I'm not gonna begrudge somebody. Do what you want. Yeah, it's not my religion, so I'm not gonna try to tell people what to do in their own belief system. But
No,
at
but I
the
think the
same,
point you're getting
yeah,
at is we, for as heathens, right? We put a lot of
yeah,
stock and worth, and one of the ways you display worth is by displaying the wealth of your people. And for most of us, our people are, you know, us. And so dressing nicely to these things, wearing nice clothing, wearing your nicest, Mjolnir if that's something you wear everywhere or something you just wear on special occasions. Putting on that face is important.
I agree, and I think something that I'm gonna I have, my background is theater. And as part of theater, one of the things that we actually study quite a fair bit is religious ritual because that's the origin of modern theater. And to me, there is something to be said about, yeah, right, that Mjolnir you only wear in ritual. For me, it's that putting on of the kindred ring that I wear in ritual every time that's a thing. And wearing, and wearing nicer clothes. And it's, sometimes I'll even dictate, hey, if you're coming to ritual, I would like everyone to dress this certain way, these colors. And that's because I'm trying to get everybody in that mindset, right? I'm trying to get everyone in a mindset that is out of the ordinary, out of the mundane. We're trying to transform here. And part of that is, and that's why like some groups that use historical dress, they do so because it does that mind shift. Do you have to do it to do heathen ritual? No. But if it works and it's something that helps get you out of that, mundane and into a spiritual place and a place where you're in the ritual, then that's what you got to do. It's a transformative thing, and that's hard. That's really can be hard to do, is finding like transformative uh things.
Yeah, it's setting not just the space aside, which I mean, we've gone into setting ritual space aside before on the show, but it's also setting yourself aside and setting yourself up to have the proper mindset for that sort of activity. It's kind of an important thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's so important. I mean, here's the thing. We can go back and we can debate, I mean, we can bring in all these other things, but at the end of the day, ritual has to work. It has to have meaning, and it has to have meaning not just for you, but for every participant, whether that's, actual people in the group or whatever. It has to affect some sort of change, because I feel like if you go through ritual and it doesn't affect some sort of change, you've only just basically you're play acting at that point. Now that, what that changes is entirely up to you, but I don't think for a good ritual, you don't walk away the same person you were when you entered.
Yeah, well, I can buy that. I mean, I know the hierophany won't hit every time, and religious experiences
No.
should necessarily be rare, but there should be an impact. And ladies and gentlemen, Thorin made it. He's been out with the family today.
Sorry, my folks came into town to meet their granddaughter, so they're more important than you.
How dare you be so selfish?
Yeah,
I thought
really
they wanted to
seriously.
meet me.
Right, so I'm going to go ahead and catch me up here for a second. Hi, everybody. It's good to see you. I'm going to assume everybody did the normal stuff at the beginning of the show. Who do we toast?
We haven't
Nobody.
toasted.
We kind of got
haven't gotten
distracted, and I went on a rant about some prestige culture rant that I've been saving for a few weeks.
Oh, wow. So I didn't even miss the toast. Fair enough.
Nope. Which I don't know who we're
All right,
toasting.
then.
So
Who are we toasting? Josh?
We don't have anyone. We did have one person who asked us a question when we asked for it. That was not, does this look infected? Thanks, John. So, I mean, I guess we could, if anyone has his name up.
Toast the one listener who paid attention.
Yeah.
yeah, well,
'Cause,
Thanks to our one fan.
yeah.
I mean, it's kind of a tradition, I guess, at this point.
For our fans to ignore our requests for questions. They did really good last week.
It's true. Well, I mean, we did just start, so they may ask questions later. But Roland Clays, you asked us a question, and we appreciate it. So here's to you.
To Roland.
So Roland. Now, is he ROLAND or ROW?
ROLAND.
Okay.
Doesn't get
important
spelled
'cause-
weird until it gets to Clays. And I'm not spelling that on the internet because I don't want you all to go and bug him.
I asked because my father's mother's maiden name was Roland.
Oh.
And it's not that common of a last name.
I had a French teacher, his last name was Roland with a W.
I've been tracing on Ancestry.com. It's been great.
So I guess since we did a toast, Lauren, are you drinking anything special tonight? Sweet tea, Dr.
Sweet
Pepper?
tea. Sweet tea because booze and hydrocodone don't mix.
The
So
hell they don't.
they don't for me. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. I didn't want to fall asleep during the show.
That's fair. That's fair. I've been there. How about you, Josh?
I am drinking Saint DeCara's double stout. This bad boy right here.
Oh, I don't know if I got that one. I've
It
got some
is-
Saint Decaras.
This is delicious, and I wish I had 2 bottles of it.
Well, I will check. That comes in a 750, right?
Yes, it does. No,
I
sorry,
will
it's
check
500.
my.
It's a pint bottle.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Okay, well then, to hell with you. If it came in a 750, I was gonna wait to open mine until you were over at my place. But no, to hell with you. I'm gonna save it for me if it's only a 500. I am drinking a brew from Evil Twin Brewing. Even More Jesus. They have a line that has to do with that. I think they originally had a beer named Jesus. I know they've got a Imperial Maple Jesus, and I haven't had the other Jesuses,
Hold on 1 second.
but the
Did you just say Imperial Maple Jesus?
I believe there's an Imperial Maple Jesus.
Canadians decided to start a theocratic empire?
That's what it sounds like.
I'm all for it.
I haven't had any of the other Jesuses, but now I kind of want to because
Trudeau is kind of dreamy. Just saying.
Even More Jesus is kind of amazing. It really is every bit as black as it looks on camera. Sorry for the white supremacist Christians that may or may not be listening. Jesus is black. Or at least the Even More Jesus is extremely black. It pours at about the consistency of warm used motor oil.
Why you gotta make me
Which
jealous
sounds-
like this?
Which sounds like a terrible thing to some of y'all out there, but as Josh is demonstrating right now, beer enthusiasts know that a lot of times that's a quality thing.
All right.
And my gods, it tastes amazing. It really does. I have a second can, Josh. I'll save it and open it when you're here.
I appreciate that. We were talking about setting aside mentally through using dressing in a certain way, dressing up. I know when we do pub moots out here, Torin, you tend to put on your jewelry.
I do.
But Lauren was making a point, and then we rudely interrupted her by toasting Roland and talking beer.
Sorry, Lauren.
It's okay. Basically, the point I'm trying to make is I feel like, in a prestige culture, which I think people have a hard time wrapping their head around that to begin with. Then you add to that, there's this trappings of like blue collarism, even if you're not a blue collar person in heathenry. I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot of heathens that, I hate to be the Havamal beater here, but I mean, it pretty much says, even if you're poor, show up wearing your clothes are clean and you show up wearing your not whatever you got, the nicest of whatever you got with your horse, whatever. And I feel like rolling out of bed and showing up isn't exactly that for most people. Like I get irritated because I want so badly to for people to get it. And oddly enough, this kind of ties into a question you asked online today about do heathens feel that they should try to dominate the conversation where they are with what they think is correct heathenry? Because I do kind of feel like I'm torn on it because on one hand it's like I'm irritated and I think people should be doing it my way because obviously I'm right. But on the other hand, it's like, people are going to do what people are going to do. All I can do is put the information out there and let them see how I'm living and how good it is and hope that they will see that and want to also have that. The whole proselytizing by attraction.
Right. So now, when it comes to the whole dress issue, obviously, Lauren, what you're talking about there is, the idea of not dressing like a complete shitheel.
Yeah.
When you go to ritual.
We're not in a ritual.
Josh, I got a little bit of a shade of the possibility of ritual dress when you were talking about it.
Yeah.
Was I missing that, or was I on that?
Yeah.
No, that came up.
I think ritual dress is another thing that's important because of the psychological thing that ritual dress can bring.
Yeah, there's a certain amount of mind space you've got to create, a certain amount of internalization that any religion is going to have inherent in it, or at least most, where essentially you got to get your head on straight before you can do anything. And part of that can be, a lot of that honestly can be accomplished by just, not dressing like a shitheel in the first place. I would argue that mostly from a heathen point of view, that's about having some respect for yourself and your people. You're representing you and your people to the numinous, and you probably don't want to show up in your ratty blue jeans and your thrice darned old band t-shirt from the 70s.
But I would argue that that's not just a ritual thing, though. I think that to some degree that needs to be, if I'm going to go and meet up with other heathens, even heathens that aren't in my group, they're not in my inner, my inner circle. I'm not going to show up in I'm not going to show up in the clothes I wear to mow my yard.
No, absolutely. And that goes back to the first thing I was saying, where, having respect for yourself and your people. I think we do our monthly thing. Josh mentioned that, I do often put on, more jewelry than I tend to wear in the average day. There's some running jokes in my friend group about a particular mode of dress I have that we affectionately refer to as hobo chic. I've got my old BDU jacket from the Navy that will keep, all the cold and the rain and basically any weather you can possibly imagine off of you. But it kind of looks like you're begging for change. Hell, I've been offered change before when sitting outside smoking a cigarette somewhere that I wasn't allowed to be inside of. And I was lazy and sat down on the sidewalk against the side of the building. I've had people offer me change when wearing that jacket. But I don't wear that when I go to these open pub moods. I have my pea coat. I wear that sometimes. I've got a nice leather coat I wear sometimes if I'm going to wear a coat. I put on a decent t-shirt. I put on jeans that don't have holes in them. He
leaves the hobo sheet for me at pub moods.
Right. You're just a thrall. Nobody cares.
Usually I wear a nice shirt. I do often wear a Heathen Talk shirt just because free advertising. But I will wear, I put makeup on, because as a woman, that's what you do. I would assume that you guys shave the areas that need to be shaved, because unless you're
Does it look like I have any areas that need shaved?
I don't know. You might shape your beard. I don't know. For all I know,
shape my unibrow.
Yeah, you're exactly. You're unibrow. I don't know. I am not fully up on your beard keeping. But you go with clean hair, you go with clean hands, and like for you,
shower whether I need it or not.
Yeah, like for you, I would imagine a lot of the jewelry you might wear to something like that on a day-to-day basis is impractical because it's hazardous because you work with your hands. But that's the thing. I mean, I want, especially if we have new people, I want people to see. I don't know. I want people to see me and see my group as people who are lucky and prosperous. And beyond that, if they see that we are, then that's what is going to make me an influencer. That's what's going to make me someone who can say, hey, this, and this about whatever particular heathen theological topic we're going on. Because beyond that, I'm just another person arguing. And I don't want to be seen as the crazy lady. Like, well, let's just say we've had some people come in that have concerned us. And so I don't want, I want to, when someone meets me, I want them to see not someone who's, who cares, who gives a shit. And that sometimes I think we heathens suffer from this weird, on one hand, oh, well, if you're not part of my inner yard, I don't care about your opinion of me, and kind of that fierce individualism almost sometimes. But on the other, I feel like it's a mental stumbling block that we all struggle to get past it. And I had that too. I'm not like, I've been there, but that mental stumbling block of, well, whatever, I do what I want, and your opinion doesn't matter to me is complete and total bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on a moment here, so.
So, I'm going to use this lull. We asked the audience earlier this week for questions they wanted us to answer. We do have some people watching live, so I'm going to throw it out there again. What questions have we not covered that you want us to cover? What do we need to take a look at for you? What do you want to know about the Heathen Talk people? And if you guys are up for it, we can do the book suggestions. I'm sure some of them are going to be the same across all three of them, but I'm also sure that a few of them are going to be unique. Who wants to go first?
I want to toss something out there real quick before we get started. I am part of the people that are organizing a event called it's the first annual Conference of Heathen Women. It's going to be a part academic, part workshop conference in Asheville, North Carolina at the end of July. If you want to know more about it, go to heathenwomenunited.org. Heathen Women United. Don't forget the United or you'll hate me. .org. It's right there on the front page. There's tickets are still available, but we're coming up on the early bird deadline and still accepting papers if you would like to submit, and as well as craftspeople and artists who would like to participate as well. Please go and do that because it's going to be awesome. I'm excited. Alvidar that hosts Sheathenry with me, I'm flying to her house and we're going to drive out there. So
I'm just going to point out,
excited.
I was curious, so I didn't take Lauren's advice. Yet,
yeah.
Do not forget the United.
Now you understand. I typed it in the other day. I forgot the United the other day, and I'm like, oh well, that I might be on a list now.
I don't. That's special.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So, all right, book recommendations. I actually pulled up my Kindle on my PC just so I can have it here to have them in front of me.
So, Lauren, let's do this in kind of instead of just recommending straight up books. If you were going to suggest a book to not necessarily a new heathen, but someone who is just finally in a place where they can start to get into the deeper subjects, where would you have them start?
I am going to say one of my probably I feel like sometimes before you can read a lot of stuff, you need to actually understand what the society was actually like. So I'm going to go with Women in Old Norse Society, which is not just about women. It's actually probably one of the most gender balanced books there is. As a woman, it can be very hard to see myself in heathen works, historical literature sagas, because there's just not a lot of women were featured. And so this is a really great book. It tells the story of the pre-Christian Norse, or the conversion era, and then into the Christian era, and how even after that point, how hard it was for Christianity to get rid of some of the things that they did. And it has a lot of great insight into ancestor worship that even continued into Christian times, because they felt like, well, our ancestors weren't Christian, so we still need to honor them in the way they wanted. Absolutely. It's one of the best books I've read, period. And I think that it gives you a really good insight into, because I think it's one thing that a lot of people that I think is important is understanding that conversion era and the a couple hundred years after, because that's where a lot of our literature comes from. So it's, to me, it's a great book.
All right. What about you, Thorin, for the person just kind of first getting into it?
Josh, you should answer this question first, because when you get done, I'm going to rant for a minute.
Uh-oh. Did you go to that website?
No, I didn't. I'm going to
Okay.
rant on this topic, actually.
For me, I think it's one we've all recommended before, and it gets tossed out as a beginner's book a lot, and I think that that's a mistake. But I think when you're finally ready to start internalizing some of these concepts, one of the best condensed readers you're going to find is going to be Culture of the Teutons. I've been rereading the first chapter here over the last couple of days, and every time I go back to it, I learn something new. Like, not necessarily something you didn't catch, but something that makes more sense after you've been doing it for a while. So it's one of those books that you should wait until you're ready for it, and then once you're ready for it, you should read it again every once in a while just to get new stuff out of it.
So I'm gonna. I intentionally did not say Culture of the Teutons, because I feel like that's one of those that you just hear so often to read, and I didn't want to, like. I feel like sometimes I feel like when you recommend it, it's like beating a dead horse. Also, because I personally have ethical issues with it, the only print source that's available. And so that always makes me like hesitant to recommend it to people as well.
That's fair.
However, it is available for free online,
I do point
digital.
I do point out to people there's a digital copy of that one, and also whenever I am recommending people to buy that book, I always point out, you go on Amazon, you can always find a used copy.
Yeah.
Get the used copy every time, because
yeah.
If for anybody out there that doesn't already realize this, the ethical concerns the fact that the only people publishing a print version at the moment that we're aware of is Jotun's Bane Kindred, and they're a bunch of luckless fucksticks. We shouldn't be giving them our money.
Yeah, for me, it goes a little deeper than that, even with people who I consider my entering art. But I will say,
they're a little more local to you, so.
Yeah, well, not just that. It has to do with my kindred brother by another mother. So,
gotcha.
I would also like to state on that, though, that there is someone else working on a print version, and hopefully now that she is done with school, it will get out there before Christmas. Hopefully.
I've also heard that there's a new translation coming out sometime relatively soon.
That would be awesome, Jackson.
That would be awesome.
Because I mean, I
don't think it's Crawford.
Really? That's surprising.
No, I think it's a. I heard that it was coming from some overseas university, and it was going to be in print again soon as a new translation.
That's good, because it's German. Yeah, because the actual book written, I think, is in it's in Victorian era German, so that makes sense. All right, Thorin.
Okay. So I'm going to give the simple version of the answer to this before I start to rant. If I'm absolutely pressed, going with the way Josh put it, of somebody who's been doing it for a little while but is trying to take their first steps into the deeper end of actually understanding heathenry better. If I'm absolutely pressed, I'm going to go with We Are Deeds. It examines heathenry from
I assumed that the person had already, like, I assumed from what Josh said, that person would have already read that. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I assume that if you're at that level, you've already read We Are Our Deeds.
See, I'm never going to make that assumption because I know how easy it is for a person to get caught up in the concept of, oh, I need to buy a book, www.amazon.com. And the thing is, if you go and try to buy We Are Our Deeds on Amazon.com, you're going to end up seeing prices at the lowest. If you're lucky, you'll see $50, $60, $70 copies, and you're going to see them up in triple digits. And that's because people are ridiculous and they don't realize that it's super easy to actually get your hands on it at a reasonable price from the source. And so they think that they can sell their copies of Amazon, or they're just being opportunistic and realizing since nobody else is selling it on Amazon, they can ask whatever they want for it and see if somebody bites. Hell, I might put my copy up on Amazon for like $300 just to see if somebody buys it.
That's what I'm sitting here thinking, man, I'm in the wrong business.
No, I won't actually do that, but it's fun to think about.
I might buy a copy and do that just to see.
You know, I should put it up for sale on Amazon, and then if somebody actually does bite at $300, I'll just send them a note saying, no, you're dumb. Here's where you actually buy it for $17, and you're dumb.
And sometimes even cheaper if Lulu's having a sale.
Yeah, so as Lauren alluded to there, to get We Are Our Deeds, go to Lulu, the on-demand printers, which is where White Marsh Press prints it through, and publishes it through.
Here,
So
I'll make it even if you just type in We Are Our Deeds in the Google. The very first link is the Lulu store, not Amazon.
Oh, perfect. That's great. So yeah, Google it, don't Amazon it. Go to Lulu, buy it. It's a great book for a heathen of any level. It was written many moons ago, but it's specifically, it was written by a heathen for heathens, examining the heathen worldview as we had reconstructed it up to that point. It's not perfect. It's
yeah.
We've moved on from that point. I think it's had at least one revision so far to make it a little bit better. But even in its state of imperfection, it's about the closest I can say there is to a really good beginner's book, because it's not focusing on a bunch of esoteric bullshit. It's focusing on the actual nuts and bolts of heathen worldview with some pretty decent backing arguments for that worldview, largely linguistic, but also historical and anthropological.
And, I mean, I just want to point out that we've even gone into and discussed the fact that some of the etymological stuff, we've progressed past that point. The points he makes using it still stand.
Right.
It's the method that's come under
scrutiny.
Question.
And I mean, here's the thing, that I know a lot of people, if you're a brand new baby heathen, never heathened before, a lot of people, there's a lot of recommendations that come out, and I actually just got into a pretty decent debate about this with people. For me, it was like, I feel like you need to read, this book first, because I don't feel like you're going to understand Culture of the Teutons. You're not really going to understand the place where people are, it's like
you're starting to hit towards the heart of my upcoming rant here in a minute.
I feel like you have to have some sort of, even for nothing else, definitions, right?
Right.
Because you're going to see all these words you don't know. And to me, it's like, I don't know, there are certain sports I don't know crap about. And if I were to send out and all of a sudden decide I want to go play soccer, because I don't know anything about soccer, and they start throwing, soccer lingo at me, I don't know what the hell they're telling me. And the heathenry is the same way, especially with things like We Are Our Deeds, which are not, Culture of the Teutons, which was, originally meant not as a work for heathens, but an academic work.
An academic work written 104 years ago, so that doesn't help either. Now, the only thing other thing I would say on We Are Our Deeds, and I think I expressed this to Toby at some point. Maybe it was Toby. that I'd love to see them go back and do a reissue of that book where they take all of the etymological arguments that are in the text and edit them out into an appendix and just footnote them. Because I'm not going to lie, my etymological game is weak as fuck. I'm terrible with etymology. And when I'm reading a book like We Are Our Deeds that has been recommended to me by people that I respect, that I know what they're talking about, I just sort of brush over the etymological parts and accept them because I wouldn't be able to refute them if I read them. I don't have the education for that. I don't know those spells, as it were.
See, that's why when we go through this book with new heathen people, with my kindred, or even when we went through it as a kindred a while back, we have a Ben, and Ben is fluent in Old Norse, at least in reading, writing, and I mean, without a Ben, I don't know that we could get through it as easily as we did just by the sheer fact that we have someone who knows that stuff. Otherwise, it is kind of hard.
Right. Anyways, so yeah, but the thing is, if you're going to read it as a beginner's text, which, like I said, it's about as good as a beginner's text I think you're going to find out there. Do what I did: brush over the etymological arguments. If you want, absolutely question them. Always question the arguments. Go look them up, figure out whether or not they're legit, talk to other heathens who do have a strong etymological game, and see what they think about the arguments. But as far as if you're just going to take my word for it and read it and internalize it, then you can do that while just sort of glazing your eyes over a little bit when it gets into the etymology. Other than that, it's a damn solid text. But that's going to launch me into a little bit of what I'm ranting about. It's kind of a two-stage thing. First of all, there isn't a good beginner's text out there. There is no Heathen 101 text. Anyone who tells you differently is trying to
I just want to point out this is why I avoided the 101 and was specifically looking at 102.
Yeah,
right.
That's why
it's going to come up in this sort of conversation, is the idea of a beginner's text, a 101 text. And I've been having that conversation with a few people recently. I've seen it brought up online as well, and I think the best way I've seen it put so far was, going back to Toby during a public conversation that was being had. He says the reason there's no Heathen 101 text is because nobody's written the Heathen 401 text. You've got to have, it's got to be all summed up and gone into deep before you can write a basic text on it. That's kind of the way it works. You can't write an introductory text on something that is not already deeply explored, understood, and written on. And we're still trying to figure that out. We're still going down that road. There are people that are trying to get that done. But for now, it doesn't exist. So I know in the past that, we've recommended, over the years, certain books have been recommended. I know one that popped up for years, and even I have recommended as a beginner's text was the beginner's guide. The Practical Guide to Asatru, Patricia LaFalva. Not a terrible book. I have read many worse beginners books. It's still got a lot of garbage in it. And I mean that with all the respect in the world to the author, but there's really no way for me to say it more gently than that. I will qualify that with saying that she does point out where she gets into her own UPG, which is great. But there's stuff in there that doesn't belong in any beginner's text, and there's missing stuff that does belong in a beginner's text. So it's why I say just go back to something like We Are Our Deeds that just talks about the worldview, the kind of things you need to internalize in your brain.
I'm going to say that there are introductory texts that aren't necessarily meant to be like Heathen 101 as much as they're like heathen, they're like remedial heathen, like Practical Guide. And I think that one especially, that's a good one to kind of give you an idea of, okay, this thing exists and here are some thoughts about it, but not a, 101. I feel it's more of a 90, a 99 as they call them,
I could see it being a almost a pamphlet on heathenry, the kind of ones you'd pick up at the front of a church or something.
To me, it's somewhat different about it. To me, it's similar to, and I'm going to have to go to Wicca on this one, just because Wicca is the largest published on Gardner's The Truth About Witchcraft Today. That's not a book that tells you how to be a Wiccan. That's a book that explains what they believe, what Wiccans believe, and kind of gives you a sense of kind of the flavor of their religion and how they practice. That's how I feel about that book. I believe it gives you the flavor of what she thinks and practices and kind of what it is without necessarily being terribly instructional, which it shouldn't. Personally, I don't think heathen books should be instructional, but that's another story.
Well, but I think to the point that Thorin was making there, and I think you kind of qualified it there aren't good 101 books because we don't have any 101 books yet. We've got the remedial, as you call it. We've got the introductory, this is a thing that exists, yay, kind of book. But nothing that is really... we don't have a Heathenry for Dummies book.
And here's the thing, you know what the best way you're going to learn 101 level heathenry is? From another heathen. And I understand that everybody's in that situation where there's a group you can join right there. But that doesn't keep you from make connections with people, find somebody to learn from, even if you're not necessarily going to be like, in a kindred, find somebody knowledgeable that you can talk to about these things. And I think that's, and make friendships so that people will invest in you and learn from them. Because I think that's the best way you're going to learn it. But, that's just like my opinion, man.
That's the way the cookie crumbles, I guess. So, Thorin, what was the second part you were getting into there?
Well, I was going to go on to the point of I know that people feel like that's a question they have to ask. The what should I read next? What's the book I need to be reading? And the fact is, it's a really, and I went into this a little bit on last week's show. It's a really difficult question for you to ask somebody because people just don't have any basis of understanding of you to answer that question. If you're asking that question of somebody that you're intimately familiar with, somebody who is right there with you on, that where you're at in your education, then it's a reasonable question. If Josh asks me what he should read next, I'm going to have an answer for him because I know what he's been reading. We've been talking about heathen theology on a regular basis, so I'm going to see where he has gaps in his knowledge, things that he should be picking up. In fact, I believe he just bought a whole handful of books because we had the conversation of what should you be reading next. And that's great. But if you're, Joe Schmo on the internet, I don't know what you should be reading next. I really don't. I used to think I could answer that question. And then I realized one day I can't. I honestly just cannot answer that question. I can give you suggestions like telling you should probably read We Are Our Deeds. I would tell you to read Culture of the Teutons, but to be honest with you, I'm one of those people who thinks there's prerequisites before you get into that one.
Thank you.
It's like we were talking about. We Are Our Deeds is probably a prerequisite to Culture of the Teutons. And honestly, another prerequisite of Culture of the Teutons is simply the ability to parse that kind of literature. It's a 104-year-old academic text. Things have changed, man. They're not the same anymore. And a lot of people are just never going to be able to parse that, or at least not without a lot of priming from other types of works.
Thank you.
Yeah. If you're talking about, if you start to get more particular about it, that helps. If you're saying, I'm trying to learn about ritual structure, or at least the concept, I'm trying to read things about ritual. I have a boatload of suggestions for that. However, I don't know which ones I should actually suggest to you because it's the same thing with the prerequisites of whether or not you're going to be able to parse them at all in the first place because you're just not, your head isn't primed to read them. I'm not going to throw a random person into reading Catherine Bell, because Catherine Bell, even people who are into academic reading, her shit hurts your head. It's great stuff. It's important stuff. I've got one sitting right here. You know, this is a great book to read when you're trying to
go to sleep.
Well, that's a perfectly reasonable thing to say.
Yeah,
I could definitely read me some Bell to go to sleep to. I'll get 3 or 4 pages in before I pass the fuck out if I'm laying down. But yeah, but honestly, unless you're already used to highly academic writing and highly academic anthropological texts, you're not going to get Catherine Bell. It doesn't matter how smart you are. It's not a matter of commenting on your education when I say things like this, or saying things on your mental ability, I should say. It's a matter of commenting on your education.
I think I want to add to that. One of the things that makes this question difficult beyond where you're at is what you're hoping to accomplish. For instance, I have a book here by Arnold Gennep. See this one right here? It's called The Rites of Passage.
Mm.
If you are not working on building rites of passage or building general rites in general into your practice, you have no need for that book. None. It is. You don't even pick it up.
No, absolutely.
And so, depending on what you're hoping to accomplish, is going to depend, or is going to change what I recommend to you.
Well, you know, I last week I caught some flack after the show for my ominous refusal to mention the title of the book. Lots of people asked me about the book, and some people even pointed out that, you know, some people accused me of gatekeeping knowledge, which wasn't at all what I was trying to do. Some people just said, you know, you can't save people from themselves, which is absolutely true. So, you know, here's another book. This is a prime example. It's what really got my wheels turning recently on the idea of how much I hate the question of what you should read next. Ritualization, Human Interiority by Clemens Cabalin. This book is painful to read. And it's also irredeemably valuable to certain people, depending on what your goals are in reading books for heathenry. Are you trying to truly, deeply understand the concept of religion down to the atomic level so that you can begin to better participate in the reconstruction of heathenry? Then sure, read this book. I've also got a list of 20 or 30 other ones you need to read first, which is one of the reasons I didn't really want to talk about the title of that book, because it's only a $12 book, and there's people that are going to rush out and buy it, and they're going to read it. And out of that book, there's about 10% of it that's even particularly applicable to heathenry, but you need the other 90% to understand and employ the 10%.
And I want to throw something in on that. Not everyone yes, we're kind of at a point right now where it would be nice if everyone was a theologian, but not everyone's going to be. And, you know, not everyone, I'll be honest with you guys. I am a technical person. I can throw an awesome ritual because I understand the logistics of ritual, but I don't always, you know, I work on my theological. It doesn't come naturally or easy to me at all. And not everyone is going to be a theologian. You know, I'm lucky that I have someone in my group who does understand it, and I can turn to him for guidance and all that. But the fact of the matter is, don't feel bad if, like, you try to get into some of these books and they're beyond you, because I'm a highly educated person, and I can't get through a lot of books because they are just not something that I'm wired to understand. And that's okay.
I do have a book that I recommend for everyone regardless of your level or what your intentions are. It's this one right here. It's Peace Weavers and Shield Maidens, Women in Early English Society. I recommend this book for 2 reasons. One, it's a really good read. And 2, it's a really good read. Like, it's one of the few that is just really enjoyable to read, easily digestible. I recommend it.
Unless you're like me and you're visually impaired and there's no accessible version. So, yeah.
Well, there is that.
Yeah. I feel the same way about Women in Old Norse Society. It's written for consumption by, the masses. It's not it's well written. Jenny Jockins just has a really knack for being able to explain complicated things in layman's terms. And it's a very balanced look at what these societies were like before, during, and after Christianization. And I think that's important to learn because as you start digging through other sources of like the sagas and the Eddas, remembering that they were written during Christianization, they were written during that Christianization time, So it's seeing how that society changed helps you understand the writing of these, sagas and Eddas and stuff. It gives you a lens to look through to understand, it's kind of like reading the sagas, understanding that Snorri Sturluson wrote them, the Eddas, the prose Eddas, because he wasn't trying to write them as some sort of religious text. He was trying to write them to preserve skaldic poetry. And I swear to God, if one more person starts talking to me about how evil he is and how it was all about God and Christians and stuff, yeah.
It was essentially
I might strangle somebody.
A workbook, but I do want to transition a little bit here. We've had one question.
Woohoo.
I'm very disappointed in you, audience. There's been one question, and that comes from an infamous troll. Can you discuss the consequences of normalized transgressive behavior when it is commonly accepted socially, but not ritually?
I'm going to ask, honestly, I'm going to need an example on that because I'm struggling to think of something. Well, it's just not coming, like an example of that just not coming to mind, so I'm having trouble wrapping my head around it.
So let me take this one.
Yeah.
Because I worked on it fairly hard and discovered that there was not enough information for what I was looking for when I was working on it. But I was recently working on a paper where I was discussing the idea that when a tribe's people accepts a person under a certain identity, they become that identity not only to their people, but also to the divine. What that paper was doing was attempting to ritually normalize transgendered individuals, because a lot of heathen rituals do have gender roles built into them. Whether or not they're hard gender roles or not, they're there. And in an effort to prove the point that you can have them accepted as the gender they identify as within a ritual context, I was doing a lot of research and writing that, and I was attempting to make that normalization. But what are the consequences when we don't make that normalization, even though it's been made socially? For instance, I know there are also true groups out there. There might be a few heathen ones, I don't know any, but I know there are also true groups out there that will say it's okay for you to be gay unless you're a member of this group. So formerly transgressive behavior has been accepted by society, but they do not accept it within their ritual structure.
Religion is inherently conservative. You can take a formerly transgressive behavior and see it normalized socially, and it's going to take longer to normalize in a religious capacity, in a ritual setting, if it normalizes. And part of the reason for that is the consequences of normalizing something in a ritual setting. When you take a concept of a tribe having a ritual structure that has been built and proven itself out to work, every change to that ritual structure is risky. Every time you change it, you are risking the very function of it. And thus it becomes and remains inherently conservative. So it's extremely natural that, a behavior is going to be ritual or socially normal. A transgressive behavior we socially normalize before it's religiously normalized. And so we're talking about, let me go back to read the question again, see how he worded it. So the consequences, okay, yeah, no, I was just scrolling back up to it. So the consequences of a normalized transgressive behavior when it's commonly accepted socially but not ritually. I'm going to go ahead and go with the most close to home example of that, not just because of the social dynamics of my tribe, but also the social dynamics of my area where my tribe exists at. Is the concept of trans heathens. From a social point of view, in this area, being trans is a normalized thing for the most part. I'm not saying that those people still don't struggle with social issues around here. They absolutely do. But it's notably a very normalized thing around here. However, it hasn't been normalized in a ritual capacity in my tribe yet. It's something that we are working on how that should go. And the thing is, there are reasons behind not just immediately normalizing it, because we're still trying to figure out the impact to the ritual structure of normalizing it, or how we are to normalize it. Because we've spoken before about how, there are gender roles in heathenry, there are gender roles in ritual. So how does one hinder gender roles in the face of a trans person? It gets really rough, and that's why you got to do it carefully. It's why you, as I pointed out, have to be conservative with it and how you deal with it.
Whereas in my tribe, where I live in an area where, oddly enough, transgender, it's probably just the opposite. I mean, I hurt internally in my heart for people I know, people I'm friends with, people I love who are transgender. Yet in my tribe, it was relatively simple for us to handle and how we handled it. And the reason being that we kind of came into our understanding with this idea that at the time, one of my members of my kindred is transgender, and at the time they were more of a different kindred. We were friends though with him. So we kind of came into these thoughts and ideas with the idea of, hey, there's someone we care about who's in another kindred that we're close with who's transgender. How does this relate to us? And our answer is it works for us. I'm not going to tell people how it should work for other people, because that's just not how it works. But I can tell you that it worked for us, and but at the same time, it was something that was right there and happening and had to be dealt with, and it had to be dealt with pretty quickly. And not even quickly, I would say just as a matter, it had to be dealt with urgently. It was something that we felt was had some urgency to it because of someone we care about, someone who it was important to us, because their well-being, especially now that they are a member of our kindred, their well-being, this person's well-being is my well-being. I'm their she who must be obeyed. If their well-being is, mine and ours just as much as my well-being is theirs. And so we fixed it. We did the best we could, and it works for us. And it comes into some coming of age ritual stuff, but that's neither here or there or anywhere else.
Right.
But it works. And that's all I can say about it is it works, because otherwise, to me, it was going to negatively affect our luck if we didn't find a way to make it work, because it was going to hurt relationships and it was going to hurt things that didn't need to be hurt.
Yeah, I feel that we're rather fortunate with our situation, because we have a trans man in our tribe, and he is being every bit as conservative about trying to figure it out as I am, and he is actively trying to help us figure it out.
What's funny is, in this case, the trans man is being more conservative than I am. So you have a cisgendered white male who is being more progressive in that area than the transgendered male.
The one who's actually affected by it.
Yeah, it's a really weird dichotomy to be in.
It's an extremely beneficial one to be in. To be honest with you.
Yeah, another thing that has helped me, at least, is having other groups that have successfully been through these things, and being able to have that's one of the great things about going to regional gatherings and making friends with people who live, in other places, is, other people, other tribes of people that you respect, have gone through this. And so you're able to say, how did you deal with this? How did you make this work? And, kind of build off their knowledge as well as your own. I think that's another thing that helped us a lot, was having another group that had already done this successfully, that we were friends with, who we could kind of say, poke and say, hey, how you doing this? What's up with this?
So, but I think, and I caught the tail end of it, and I know Thorin just got up, so this is probably not the greatest time to ask this, but it sounded like you were actually talking about some of the consequences you faced because of your decision. Did I catch that right, Lauren?
No, we haven't had any consequences we've not had any.
No, were you making a decision to avoid some of them, like hurting relationships? That was why you chose.
No, I would just say that it was more important to us to work to find a solution than risk damaging relationships.
Okay.
So it became a priority. It became a priority for us because of the relationships, if that makes sense. Whereas a group that doesn't have any transgender members or friends or whatever, it's not going to be a priority for you, because you've got other, you may have a bunch of kids who are coming up on, needing coming of age rituals, and that's your priority. Our oldest kid in my tribe is 6. So we got a long ways to go before the whole coming of age stuff. So, those we don't have to worry about, but other tribes have other priorities. That was just ours.
Yeah, well, and that makes sense, right? But it does lead into that conversation about the consequences of it, because there will be. The consequences are going to be, there are going to be good people who are not included. There are going to be good people who have to set aside their personal feelings about something for the betterment of their people, and they're not necessarily just consequences that have to do with the transgressive element of it, but in reality, they're just consequences of being heathen. Whether it's frith or any of these other things, being heathen requires you to set yourself aside a lot for the betterment of your people.
Yeah. And here's the thing, it comes down to, who are your people? And it comes down to, for me, being in a tribe that's not just, we're made up of a lot of people with, we minorities, people who are transgender, other parts of the LGBT spectrum. Those are issues that matter to us. That's why if there's, issues regarding gay rights or whatever, we're going to be out as a group working on that, because that's what's important to us. But, it's going to be at the same time, there are good people who think that the very idea of allowing a gay person or a transgender person into our particular, into a heathen group is stupid. And those people can go away because I'm not going to, sorry. I mean, my priority are the people that are in my tribe right now, not an outsider. And you guys do, that's why that's why not everyone is fit for every group.
Yeah. I mean, if somebody came along and had a fundamental issue with the existence of a member of my tribe, the last thing I'm going to do is try to placate them in any way to let them in. It's you adjust to us, not the other way around.
Yeah. And that, eventually I will say when people join groups, the group is going to adjust as a whole because the dynamic is going to change, and that's always going to, but yeah, I agree with you on that as far as like, you're going to have to, you're going to have to look at the group and see. That's why we're super upfront with what we believe, because I don't want somebody coming in and then all of a sudden, they come to one of our meetups and there's gay people there, and I'm sorry, they're more important than you. So if you're going to come in, or, we have a lot of problem with the Nazis of the alt-right, like old school. Yeah, we got a lot of problem with, the old school racists before it was alt-right. And you know what? That's their prerogative, but I want people to know ahead of time, this is the kind of group we are, and this is what we're doing. And if you don't like gay people, if you don't like people of mixed race, then you're not going to like us. So there's other groups down the road. Bye.
Okay, so I think we've kind of beat that one into the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope we answered the infamous trolls question.
There's another question that we did get, though. Does heathenry need a philosophy? And if so, what would you think it should look like?
Doesn't it have one? I mean,
does it though? I mean, I don't know. I guess
I don't think it has a formalized philosophy. I
No.
think that it has the building blocks for a philosophy, or at least a philosophical outlook.
I'm going to say this from right now. I am looking forward to the day when heathenry has grown to the point that we can truly support people who are able to, have the cerebral energy to come up with these things. But I don't know that, like many other things, I don't know that we've hit the critical mass that is needed to really be able to support it.
I don't think... Well, so right now, heathenry is in a situation where we have a lack of dedicated theologians. We have a lot of part-time theologians. We have a lot of armchair theologians. But we're still nailing down the whole theology part of things.
My chair has wheels.
But we don't... I don't know of any philosophers who are really getting into heathenry, and I'm not sure you can put together heathen philosophy until there's a nailed down theological school. And that's because the theology, at least from a heathen perspective, is going to inform everything. We get the question all the time, what did the ancient heathens call their religion? Did they call it ossuary? They didn't have a word for it.
Life.
It was life. That was what you did. And from a heathen perspective, like, everything I do is me, and I am heathen, thus everything I do is heathen. That doesn't mean everything I do is in the name of, the gods or whatnot, but everything I do is heathen because I am heathen, and if I'm doing it, it's heathen.
Kind of. Well, to me, okay, so I'm in the middle of writing this, like, huge, long essay, and it's pretty disturbingly epic, I'm not going to lie. Because I'm specifically working through this idea about, because speaking of philosophies, I'm actually trying to dispel that heathenry does not belong to a specific theological philosophy. Because I don't, I think that a lot of times, because most of the religions that we surround ourselves with in Western culture are somewhat built on theological personalism, and heathenry is not. And so a lot of people struggle to understand heathenry because they can't get their minds out of that theological personalism. Um, and that's a situation where, I'm not saying heathenry doesn't have a philosophy, but I can tell you it's not that. If it did, it's not this one. And that's really where we are right now. It's a lot of, well, I don't know what it is, but I know it's not this. So there you go. I'm putting it out there. Theological personalism is not the philosophy of heathenry. The best I got. Sorry.
Well, I mean, and that's one of the tricks to. So we've gone over it a few times on the show, and I think this is an important point to get to and to make. We're still in the initial growth phase of heathenry. We're starting to, I would argue, you could say we're starting to transition into that almost pre-adolescent stage, where we're starting to learn all the things and can almost run fast without falling on our faces. But we have a ways to go before we can get into the grown-up phase. And that's going to be something that we don't get to until we can define not only what we are, but what we're not. And being able to set that boundary of we're not this and we're not that is going to help us get to what we are, because being able to say personalism is not what heathenry is going to help you get to the point where you can say, okay, well, if it's not that, that leaves this. So what is this?
Yeah, and I think, for me, I've got this whole 7-point criteria about it to find if a religion is personalism, which, yeah, it's actually, I'm actually kind of proud of it, but yeah, that's what we got to do. At this point in time, I get a lot of flack because I do a lot of comparison to Christianity. But the fact of the matter is, Christianity, for the most part, is a benchmark I can use, because almost everyone in the, at least in the United States, Western culture, has an understanding of Christianity, whether they realize it or not. Or as Thorin would say, I was born a Christian and so were you. It just makes a good baseline, because I can say, okay, here is this piece of information. Here, okay, so this is kind of the Christian idea and what society accepts. And this is how heathenry is different. And people kind of give me shit about it, but at the same time, we don't really have any other benchmark or baseline I can use against it. What else am I supposed to do to try to explain away, kind of universally explain something to a bunch of people with a bunch of different experiences if I can't find something that in general is a good benchmark? I don't know.
I don't think this is an answerable question. Not yet. It's, so I mean, we know what Greek philosophy looks like. We know what Christian philosophy looks like. But those philosophies arose as a result of divisions in thought, divisions in how somebody approached them, in actual schools of thought. We need to develop schools of thought first to be able to then define those schools of thought and thus have divisions in philosophy. And
I don't know if we have, once again, the critical mass.
No, we don't have. Yeah, no, that's a good enough way of putting it, honestly. We're not there yet. To be honest with you, there aren't enough people thinking yet. Is one way to put it. And yeah, it's the critical mass concept. There are a limited number of people right now that are really truly putting a lot of thought into heathenry from a theological perspective. And while I'm not trying to pretend all of those people are agreeing right now, they're certainly not. But I don't think any of them are developed enough to start to truly identify the reality of the divisions. I think a lot of the ways that you were describing things, Lauren, is a good way to sum it up too, is you were talking about things that we aren't, and you can't really start to develop schools of thought. You can't start to develop ideas of philosophy when we're still at the stage of defining ourselves by what we're not. We need to figure out what we are so that people can then begin to solidly disagree on what we are.
And I think to some degree we're getting in there.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of to me, a lot of times in writing for a heathen audience, I have to write with the idea and knowledge that I potentially could have anyone from, someone who is a religious, or as close to a religious scholar as we have, all the way to a brand new baby heathen or somebody who's just interested in heathenry. I actually got some interesting feedback from people who were non-heathens on that my gods aren't personal. And so, that's I think part of the other problem is just trying to, because there's no because we're a religious minority, because we don't dominate or even really make much of a blip on the whole of the overculture. Sometimes you have to take the overculture and compare it to make sure that everyone who's reading what you're writing gets what you're saying. And that's more of a writing problem than a religious problem.
To me, I think the whole concept of, developing philosophies or schools of thought is that to kind of come back from how I was putting it a minute ago is I think philosophies and schools of thought are an awful lot like gangs. You can't have just one. I say that
if
with
there's only one gang, it's called a government.
I say that with an immense amount of humor because I grew up or went to high school anyway, in a very small town. And I recall the day that me and some friends were walking through and had a bunch of guys roll up on us, trying in very comical ways to intimidate us. And they were all wearing, I think, red paisley do-rags. And they tried to tell us they were a gang, and we asked them who the other gang was. And they got really confused.
See, Arkansas.
But yeah, that's the whole thing.
We had small towns, but you'd have a gang in one town, and the rival gang was in the town 10 miles away because, small towns, but at least we knew how to do it.
Yeah, well, nobody's driving 10 miles to tag somebody else's neighborhood.
They are. Oh, yeah. This is back when gas was less than $1 a gallon.
That's different.
I wouldn't. But yeah, I mean,
the whole thing is, there's got to be well-developed schools of thought that disagree with one another on a fundamental level before we can really say that we've got philosophies. And I use that plural because, like I said, I don't think you can have just one. If you have just one, then it's just theology. When you're coming at it from a religious perspective, anyway.
Yeah. Well, and even with theology, you're going to get competing theological schools.
Oh, yeah.
And we already have them developing within heathenry. They're just not so much competing as you play in your neighborhood, we'll play in our neighborhood, and we'll only throw rocks on Tuesdays.
To me, I think where we're going to start seeing that fracturing, and this is just I've been a heathen for a long time, educated guess, is as you start to see more and more people kind of hone in on not even necessarily regionalism, but the idea of where you're starting to see people who are more Anglo-Saxon or Norse or Continental Germanic or whatever. When you start to see that kind of narrowing in, I think that's where you're going to start seeing if it happens, that's where the breaks are going to be, in my opinion. Because you already see some of that between the Theodish and other heathens.
So we've got about 4 minutes left, and Lauren, you have a thing coming up that I want you to talk about.
I assume you're talking about my the women's conference.
Yeah, I want you to give some information on it and let people know what it is, what you're going to be talking about at the conference, what they can expect, and why they should go.
Well, it's going to be, ignore that. It's going to be the last weekend of July in Asheville, North Carolina. This is started by a group of women that I'm involved with who it's going to rotate. It's going to be in the United States on odd years and in Europe on even years. And we are playing. Right now there's we're going to have a ton of artists and craftspeople and people presenting academic papers in the in kind of the study of heathenry. We're going to have, it's going to be kind of like halfway academic conference, half, heathen festival. And I'm really excited about it. There's going to be a community dinner. And there are, oh my goodness, it's not on here. Where is it? I guess because they're all booked up. There's going to be, sorry, I'm trying to find the rest of the information because it was right here and it's moved. But there's also going to be some stuff that is going to be really interesting as far as we're going to be staying at a really nice kind of resort place that's out in the country. That's a lot of the cabins are kind of set away. So it'll be a lot of time for you to kind of go and have like quiet time. We're also going to be partially on a college campus. So it's going to be a really cool kind of hybrid event. It's our first year doing this, and I'm very excited about it. We're going to be doing Heathenry Live from there. We're going to do a lot, kind of like we did with last year at Cascadia Moot, where we're going to record an episode live out there so that we get a chance to talk to some women, artisans, and I'm very excited about it. It's going to be phenomenal. I'm going to be on one panel on heathenry in the media. And then I'm also trying to come up with something else to do, but specifically talking about how the media portrays heathenry versus, the actual reality of heathenry. Because those are two very different things. And and how possibly we can seek to influence that. I don't think we can change it because once again, critical mass. But I do think that we can develop relationships that can improve it.
Very
and
cool.
Then maybe people will hear about it other than on, lockup.
And if people are looking for information, is there a website?
Go to heathenwomenunited.org. Heathenwomenunited.org.
Do not forget the United.
Yeah, please don't. Otherwise, it's right there on the front page of the site. You'll see the kind of some information about it, and then a link to get your tickets. It's cheap. I mean, it's like super cheap. It's $35 registration for the whole weekend, so can't complain. That does not include lodging, though. You do have to secure your own lodging, but it's pretty reasonable out there.
Very cool. So it's 8:30.
It is.
And Lauren, you have a brand new hot tub that you need to go get into. And Thorin has a little bean burrito that needs daddy's attention, it sounds like.
Probably.
And I mean, I don't know, like they got a PlayStation, I think. On that note,
when are you coming over here to get your beer?
I don't know. When do you want me to come over to get my beer? And why are we talking about this on air?
We'll talk about it off air.
You're not the boss of me.
You're doing it wrong.
Everybody have a good week.